Professor Zekthara adjusted her thermal regulator as she prepared for the most challenging lesson in her xenobiology curriculum. The Galactic Academy's mixed species classroom fell silent as she dimmed the lights, her 4 eyes scanning the diverse assembly of students. Vorthon scouts with their crystalline exoskeletons shifted nervously, while the gaseous Netherians flickered with anticipation. In the back corner sat Marcus Chen, the only human in advanced predator studies. Today, class, we study the apex predators of Death World 7 Alpha, Professor Zekthara announced, her translator struggling with the guttural clicks of her native language. Before we begin, I must warn you, the audio recordings we're about to hear represent some of the most terrifying sounds in the known galaxy. The Vorthon's crystalline plates rattled in unison, a sign of deep unease. 3 Kafari students had already activated their anxiety dampeners, their fur standing on end. These creatures, the professor continued, pulling up a holographic display, are the dominant predators of one of the most hostile worlds ever surveyed. The planet's gravity is 1.2 times galactic standard, with extreme temperature variations and an atmosphere that would corrode most civilized species' breathing apparatus within minutes. Marcus shifted in his seat, recognizing the familiar blue-green marble rotating in the hologram. He said nothing, having learned early in his exchange, programmed that Earth was classified as a Class 2 death world, a designation that still amused him. The first recording comes from the northern continental regions, Professor Zekthara said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Brace yourselves. The speakers crackled to life, and a low, rumbling growl filled the classroom. It started as a deep vibration, then rose to a piercing scream that seemed to claw at the very air. Several students immediately activated emergency calming protocols. One Kafari fainted outright, his blue fur turning pale as his classmates carried him to the medical bay. Through the chaos of panicked alien students, a sound cut through the terror, human laughter. Marcus was chuckling, shaking his head with genuine amusement. The entire classroom turned to stare at him, their various optical organs wide with disbelief. Is something amusing about apex predator vocalizations, Mr. Chen? Professor Zekthara asked, her translator crackling with confusion. Oh, sorry, Marcus said, wiping tears from his eyes. It's just, that's a cougar, mountain lion. We call them by different names depending on where you're from. The silence that followed was deafening. Cougar. Professor Zekthara's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep cognitive processing. Yeah, they're pretty common where I grew up in Colorado. Beautiful cats, really. They usually avoid humans, but during mating season they can get pretty vocal. Marcus gestured casually at the still trembling students. That's just a territorial call, probably a male marking his range. A Vorthon student named Crixtal managed to form words through his species' harmonic translator. You recognize this creature? Sure. My dad and I used to hear them all the time when we went camping. One time we had a female with cubs, denning near our property. She'd make sounds like that every evening around sunset. Marcus paused, noting the horrified expressions around him. Wait, you guys have never heard Earth fauna before, have you? Professor Zekthara's thermal regulator was working overtime. Mr. Chen, you're telling us that you coexist with these apex predators? Well, coexist is a strong word. They generally leave us alone if we don't bother them. Though my neighbor's cat went missing last spring, and we found tracks, Marcus trailed off, realizing his casual tone was having an unexpected effect on his classmates. Your neighbor's domestic animal was consumed by this creature, and you speak of it so calmly? This from Ythara, a gaseous Netherian whose typically violet hue had shifted to an alarmed orange. Marcus scratched his head. I mean, it's nature. Mountain lions need to eat too. That's why we don't let our pets roam free in cougar country. Basic common sense. Professor Zekathara made rapid notes on her data pad. Class, we're witnessing something unprecedented. Mr. Chen, would you be willing to share more about your experiences with Death World predators? Sure. But I wouldn't really call them Death World predators. I mean, yeah, they're dangerous if you're stupid about it, but mostly they're just trying to make a living like everything else. Marcus warmed to the topic. Now, if you really want to talk about scary sounds, you should hear a grizzly bear during salmon season or wolves on a winter hunt. There's this thing brown bears do when they're warning you off their cubs. Sounds like a diesel engine mixed with a chainsaw. 3 more students required medical attention. And don't get me started on the sounds elk make during rutting season, Marcus continued, oblivious to the growing panic around him. Sounds like someone torturing a steam whistle. My first time hearing it, I thought someone was running a lumber mill at 3 in the morning. Professor Zekathara's data pad was smoking from overuse. Mr. Chen, in your estimation, how many apex predators coexist with humans on your homeworld? Marcus considered this seriously. Depends on how you define apex predator, I guess. If we're talking about things that could kill an adult human, maybe a few hundred species, but most of them don't bother with us. We're too big, too loud, and we taste weird. The classroom had grown eerily quiet, except for the soft whimpering of traumatized students and the frantic scratching of Professor Zekathara's notes. Few hundred, she repeated slowly. Give or take. I'm not counting things like poisonous, snakes or spiders because those are more avoid and respect than predator. Though there was this one time in Australia. Australia? Professor Zekathara's thermal regulator finally gave up with a small pop and a wisp of smoke. Marcus blinked. Yeah, it's a continent. Why? Is something wrong? As medical teams arrived to treat students for acute stress reactions, and Professor Zekathara was led away muttering about impossible Death World adaptations, Marcus sat alone in the classroom, genuinely confused about what all the fuss was about. After all, it was just a cougar.